Everyone, please welcome Command Sergeant Major Terry D. Burton.
Today is a great day as we celebrate the legacy of a great man who left a lasting impression on our nation and the world, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Good evening, Lieutenant Colonel Gar, Sergeant Majors, soldiers, and other distinguished guests. I want to thank you all for being here and attending today's honorable event hosted by the 172nd Infantry Brigade Equal Opportunity Team. Martin Luther King was a man with a big dream, a colossal dream that would spread across the world and impact many nations. His dream was for freedom and justice, for every living being, for brotherhood and peace to be among all people, and for righteousness, equality, and respect to be embedded in the characters of humans. Dr. King grew up in an era where there was racial inequalities towards Black Americans. The effects of these injustices left Black Americans bitter, and some were even filled with hatred. But Martin Luther King, having been raised by a pastor and educated as a pastor, devoted his life to making changes through peaceful means rather than resorting to violence as some people did. His goal was to improve the condition of every United States citizen. He taught that Blacks as well as whites had the equal rights to be protected under the promises of our nation's Constitution. Martin Luther King was born on January 15, 1929 in Atlanta, Georgia. His father was a Baptist minister and his mother led the choir. His parents were firm believers in the power of family at supper time. His parents believed that the family that dined and shared together offered the opportunity to improve the life of all members of the family. Everyone had to be present for supper because this was the important part of the day when the family shared their ideas and feelings. Perhaps it was during this time at the dinner table that the most valuable lesson of his life was learned, that everyone is equal in the eyes of the Lord, and therefore must be treated with dignity and respect. As he aged, Martin Luther King saw that many citizens of the USA were not being treated with the respect that he had learned to value around family supper table. In fact, some citizens were terribly oppressed by the racial segregation of unequal laws. This led Martin Luther King to work hard at school, to learn the powerful teaching of the Bible, and to choose a career that would allow him to make a change in the world. He wanted to leave the world a better place, and that is exactly what he did. All of us at one time or another have heard the famous and profound I Have a Dream speech given by Martin Luther King. This speech is a 17-minute masterpiece, ranked the top American speech of the 20th century by poll scholars. The speech was delivered in Washington, D.C. in 1963 as part of one of the biggest civil rights demonstrations ever to take place in the USA. One of the most famous passages of his speech is when Martin Luther King says, "I have a dream one day little Black boys and Black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls and walk together as sisters and brothers." The crowd cheered, and many Americans were moved greatly by his words and his work, and adopted his dream as one of their own. Through hard work and enduring hardship, Martin Luther King devoted his life to live his dream that was for all mankind, and especially for the United States of America. Indeed, his dream made an impact and resounded deeply in the people's hearts. Unfortunately, not everyone agreed with Dr. King as he was assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee in 1968. Since then, memorial services all around the nation have honored and celebrated his life and legacy. On November the 2nd, 1983, President Ronald Reagan signed legislation establishing the third Monday of every January as Martin Luther King Day, a federal holiday. During the signing, President Reagan said, "All right thinking people, all right thinking Americans, are joined in spirit with us this day, as the highest recognition which the nation gives is bestowed upon Martin Luther King Jr., one who also was the recipient of the highest recognition which the world bestowed the Nobel Peace Prize. America is a more democratic nation, a more just nation, a more peaceful nation because Martin Luther King Jr. became her preeminent nonviolent commander. 2 years later, on Monday, January 20th, 1986, the first Martin Luther King Day was celebrated across the United States of America and 27 other countries across the world. Balloons were flown, cars turned their headlights on at noon. The Freedom Train crossed the Washington State with 400 passengers on board. People marched in parades. Church bells sung in towns and cities across the nation. Citizens of diverse race and creed gathered together in remembrance of Dr. Martin Luther King and his message of peace and equality for all. Over half a century has passed since Martin Luther King lived. Today we continue to pay tribute to the man who delivered such a great and powerful message, even though it cost him his life. Today we find ourselves 10 years into the war on terrorism. And we, as soldiers of the 172nd Infantry Brigade, are in the heart of the war. But what is our purpose here, and what is our message? Should it be to instill peace and equal opportunity, as Martin Luther King said we should? Should it be to value freedom for all humans? I say the answer is yes. There is much we can learn and put into practice from this message as we continue to assist our Afghan friends, shoulder by shoulder, in establishing their nation's government and their freedom. Let us take from Dr. Martin Luther King's legacy to establish peace, justice, and equality. In closing, let me leave you with a quote from Dr. Martin Luther King about how he wanted to be remembered after he passed. I'd like somebody to mention that day that Martin Luther King tried to give his life serving others. I'd like for somebody to say that day that Martin Luther King tried to love somebody. I want you to say that day that I tried to bring on the war question. I want you to be able to say that day that I did try to feed the hungry. I want you to be able to say that day that I did try in my life to clothe those who were naked. I want you to say that day that I did try my life to visit those who were in prison. And I want you to say that I tried to love and serve humanity. Yes, if you want to say that I was a drum major, say I was a drum major for justice. Say that I was a drum major for peace. I was a drum major for righteousness. And all other shallow things will not matter. May God bless you and keep you safe. Strong professionals together, black talents, black hearts.
Thank you, Sergeant Major, for that incredible speech. At this time, Colonel Brad J. Ungar of the 172nd Corps Battalion will present the guest speaker with a token of appreciation that reads, the 172nd Infantry Brigade Equal Opportunity Program would like to thank Command Sergeant Major Burton for being the guest speaker for the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. celebration. Your words have surely touched those who have heard them and shed light on the message of Dr. King and the United States Army continued effort to ensure equality and respect for all soldiers who serve, regardless of race, gender, nationality, or religion. We thank you for your support of the Equal Opportunity Program. Your words of wisdom and equality have brought great credit upon you, the Equal Opportunity Program, the 172nd Infantry Brigade, and the United States Army.